Hello, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana and I review books on this channel. And I'm also currently very hot and very hungry because it's probably a heat index of 100 degrees outside and I'm sick of summer. So, I just had to get that out there. I'm over summer. I've been over summer. I'm over summer by the end of June, okay? Whew. Bitterness aside at this weather, today is another book review, or this week it is a book review, and as you can tell by the title of this video, it is Transit by Rachel Cusk, which is the second installment of the Outline trilogy by Rachel Cusk. And the first, why is my voice going weird? Because I'm also getting hangry, okay? I did a book call, I recorded a book call before this, and that took 45 minutes, and I'm hungry. I think my lunch is gone. Anyway, so I read Outline last summer and I enjoyed it. And so obviously I continued with the trilogy, and I do not plan to do a video review of Outline, but I will link in the description below where you can read my review of Outline. I will not spoil anything in this book, but I will just, as per usual, just cover the basic outline of the book, no pun intended, and talk about the themes that I picked up on. Let's dive right in because I'm hungry. Maybe it's only in our injuries, he said, that the future can take root. So in Transit by Rachel Cusk, like I said, it's the second installment of the Outline trilogy, and it precedes the last title called Kudos. And in Outline, the narrator, who is a writer, who is for the most part unnamed, you will get the narrator's name in the book, but only once. And so she's a writer, and she spends a summer in Greece teaching a writing class. And the novel Outline is comprised of a series of 9 conversations. And through those conversations that she has with various people, you get information about the narrator based on what's discussed in those conversations. So we know that her marriage is deteriorating, which is kind of the central element of that particular book. In Transit, the narrator is now separated from her husband, and she's moved to London with her 2 young sons. She is trying to adjust these changes in her life, and this is again a second volume of conversations, structured a little bit differently. They're not numbered in Outline. They're numbered each chapter 1, chapter 2. This is not numbered, but we get multiple conversations that are revealing how the narrator is coping and processing with these new familial, that is a difficult word for me to say, and personal adjustments. A big and probably the main theme of this particular book is that of identity, and how identity is often tied to the people and spaces in our lives. It also asks the questions, what happens when those identity markers are gone? Which is often what I've come across even when I look at the synopses of other nonfiction and fiction works that Cusk has written. She tends to talk about the identity of motherhood and working and being married and all of that stuff. So that those themes or those ideas are heavily infiltrate this particular trilogy. One benefit of going away, he understood now, was that it made it easier to change. Turning up somewhere else and realizing that in the process he had lost himself. So what's interesting about the Outline trilogy is that the narrator is mainly quoting or referencing what other people are saying or telling her in a conversation. And what the narrator decides to focus on within those conversations is really a reflection of her own state. She's seeing herself in these circumstances through the information that other people are sharing with her. I really think that Cusk did a really good job capturing the selfishness in conversations. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way. We, I think, are inherently selfish in conversation. And by that I mean, when we're having a conversation with someone, we're often listening and responding based on our own experience. Because what else can you really relate to? At least I know that I do that. That is how I sympathize or empathize in conversation. I was like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about because I went through X, Y, and Z, so I can relate, right? That's how most people tend to relate to other people is through their own circumstances and their own other things that they've gone through in life. People will always be abstract to us. I don't care how well you really know somebody. You can never really know what it's like to be somebody else. There's always going to be an element of a person that's going to be abstract. And so being able to take conversations that we have with people and filter them through our own experiences, opinions, and emotions, we're able to relate to a person a little bit better. And so in a way, this makes this narrator an unreliable narrator, because she is picking and choosing the elements of these conversations that she wants to focus on. And she's projecting her own experiences onto these people's experiences that they are relating to her. So we don't really know if there are times when she's misinterpreting what somebody else may have felt, or misinterpreting somebody else's body language or tone of voice, because she's seeing it through her own current circumstance. And I thought that was really interesting. And I don't know if I'm reading too deep into that, but I don't really think so, because we're only getting this person's first person narrative in her perspective. So we really don't know, if you were a fly on the wall, how you would interpret the conversations that she's having with these people. Also, like in outline, the narrator's name is only mentioned once in this novel. And I have seen and read some reviews where people are frustrated by this whole unnamed narrator phenomenon that we've got going on currently in 21st century literature, right? But I think that Cusk personally did this because it's showing how we have a collective identity. And this narrator has a collective identity because, again, she is, through these other people, her identity is being shaped based, again, on these conversations that she's having with them. We know the names of the people that she's having conversations with. And that conglomeration of people give us the image of who this narrator is. So it's taking the narrator really in a weird way, even though it's through her perspective. It's making her somewhat of a background character in her own narrative, which I think is very cleverly done. Transit also explores the idea that we are all playing roles on a stage and acting as characters in society, which is a big theme in a lot of books, right? Tying back to this theme of identity also, the narrator is questioning her roles now as a mother and a writer and a wife or a former spouse during this period of transition in her life. Transit is also asking if we can ever truly let our guard down. Even in our most intimate and private spaces, are we always acting? So here are a couple of quotes to back that up. And I'm also going to tie this into Virginia Woolf because I have a hunch, and I talked about this in my To the Lighthouse review. I have a hunch that Cusk was heavily influenced by Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. The large glass shop front had been retained. It formed part of the main living space so the inhabitants could be viewed from outside, going about their lives. He knew all the actors. As soon as he went inside, he became one of them. And again, this was the quote that really reminded me of To the Lighthouse, which I read earlier this year, because in that novel, Woolf is exploring the same idea. And Woolf uses a lot of window imagery and scenes in which the Ramseys' family life is moving around in this house. And you get images of them moving behind these glass panes, these window panes. And she talks about this inside-outside way in which people are behaving. And so I really think that Cusk was, I really think that Cusk was influenced by this. There's no way. It's too much of a coincidence. My older son had said it felt like he was acting a part in a play. Other people spoke their lines and he spoke his, and everything that happened and everywhere he went felt unreal somehow, like scripted events. So in this book, Cusk also discusses these concepts of fate and choice, which, sidebar, I feel like fate has been a huge theme that I have noticed in a lot of novels that I've been reading this year. I don't know if it's because the more that I kind of revisit a lot of ancient Greek texts and mythology, which is a huge idea and theme in Greek myth, is fate, because you have these mythological characters who are dealing with the gods, and so how much personal autonomy do these mythological characters really have when you have these really rambunctious gods doing whatever they want to do? So maybe I'm just hyper focused on that right now, but she does blatantly talk about fate and choice in this novel. Oftentimes people think that they are acting as autonomous beings, and yet life seems to sometimes feel like it's a series of events that were bound to happen. And regardless of how much you prepare, there's not so much that there's only so much you can do. And there are just things that are going to happen outside of our control. And so Cusk is presenting this idea that people find solace in the idea of fate because it removes personal responsibility from the events that occur in one's life. Only the very lucky and the very unlucky, he said, get an unmixed fate. The rest of us have to choose. Activity entails a certain blindness, the blindness of fixation. Only when their will has been exhausted do the majority of people recognize the degree of fate. It felt wrong to be choosing, Gerard said. It felt wrong for the whole of life to be based on choice. Again, if there's something that you can blame outside of your own actions, and you're removing your personal autonomy from the decisions that if you're removing your personal autonomy from the things that happen in your life, even if you made bad decisions, if you blame it on fate, it's this way of saying, oh, well, it is what it is. Que sera, sera, whatever. My conscience is clear. It's a way of kind of mentally cheating the system. It takes away personal responsibility, which is a theme I've noticed in society currently occurring today. But that's a TED Talk for another day. So, yes, maybe in an Instagram post in the coming months or so, maybe I'll explore narratives that really talk about this idea of fate and choice and relate it back to the ancient Greeks concept of such. I will again talk about that a little bit more because I finished Heroes by Stephen Fry recently, and again, fate and choice and personal responsibility is a huge theme that comes up. And there's this really interesting conversation that Heracles was having with somebody about fate and the role that the gods play in one's life. So I will bank that for another day. I'll stick a pin in that. Finally, Transit is a book that talks about loneliness. And this is a narrator that feels very lonely. And we know that she feels lonely because she talks about these people that she's talking with and how lonely they feel. She has a marriage that has disintegrated. So we don't really know why the marriage has disintegrated. You could probably speculate. But even if it was an unhappy marriage at one point, or it started off one way and then it dissolved into this unhappy relationship, there is something to a person being there in your living space and know they're no longer there. Loneliness, she said, is when nothing will stick to you, when nothing will thrive around you, when you start to think that you can kill things just by being there. That is such an accurate but sad quote, right? And it actually reminded me of a Charlie Brown Christmas. When Charlie Brown touches the Christmas tree, the little wimpy tree he gets, and all the needles fall off, and he's like, oh, everything I touch gets ruined. That is exactly what I thought about. And I was like, that is bleak, but it's accurate. I think it's spot on. And so, it's not only this loneliness in relationships. You can feel lonely maybe in a more abstract existential way in your career. If your career is feeling stagnant, the relationships that you may have with your children, your friendships, loneliness can often feel like stagnation in some ways. When you're doing these things, when you're pushing against these things to make things happen, and you just feel stuck. And I think that that's another way to describe stagnation, is loneliness. That just kind of came to me. Let me know your thoughts below. We are going to wrap up. An under 20-minute review. I should pat myself on the back. Again, I found Transit to be just as engaging and thought-provoking as Outline. Once I got to Transit, that's when I realized I want to dive into the rest of Cusk's fictional work. So I will be doing that as time allows. I did recently purchase Second Place by her, which was released last year. And of course, I'm going to go back in her catalog and read the others. I like that Cusk managed to make Transit feel like it was related to Outline just by the structure of it, the tone of the book, the style of the narrating, which I would hope would be consistent since we get the same narrator, but sometimes you can see some fluctuation in voice with trilogies. And Transit still feels like it's related, like I said, to Outline, but it still feels like its own unique piece of fiction, though it is important to read them, I believe, in order. I like the framework that Cusk is using with this trilogy, these conversation and interactions that the narrator is having with those around them, and how we often use other people's voices to color our own circumstances. And I'm looking forward to reading Kudos within the next year. One of my bookish friends did say that she felt like Kudos was the weakest of the three. She felt like it kind of narration wise, it lost some of its momentum. So it was her least favorite, but still worth reading. So I will engage for myself when I do get around to reading it. But yes, have you read Outline or Transit or the whole of the trilogy? And what did you think about it? I gave it a 4 out of 5. And I look forward to reading the rest of her work. If you are a Cusk fan, what is your favorite of her pieces of fiction? I don't know if I'm going to venture into her nonfiction. Sometimes I'm very picky with my nonfiction. But definitely her fiction. Let me know what is your favorite of Cusk's work, and I will be tempted to put it on my TBR. If you would like to follow me on Instagram, my link is below. I like to get up to all types of shenanigans on the Instagrams. It is still mainly book content, but I like to share funny memes and ballet videos because I'm a bunhead. And I post everything book-wise on Instagram first. So the reviews go live on Instagram first, and I also document like this is legit. Like what a hyperbole. I also post up there my monthly TBRs and my reading wrap-ups for each month over on that platform. I do have my blog linked below, but I'm not posting on it currently. That's one thing I just am not keeping up with right now. Can't do it all. And at this point, I'm going to sign off. My next review is going to be Pachinko by Minjin Lee, and then after that I have Heroes by Stephen Fry, The House with the Golden Door by Lodi Harper. For that book, I am going to be doing 2 book reviews in one. I'm going to do The Wolf Den and The House with the Golden Door in the same books, in the same video, since they are related. And yes, I'm going to wrap it up, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.